Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Portal of Wisdom podcast. Today, I actually wanted to talk about population and population control and just population as a whole. Because, I always say that there's two sides to every story. There's two sides of every coin. But at the end of the day, it brings duality and it brings balance. And you will always find the truth in the middle. In the middle of good and evil, in the middle of positives and negatives, in the middle of bad and good, you'll always find the truth in the middle. So, with that being said, discussing population and population growth, especially because we're living in a time where, there's a lot of people on this planet. And, when there's a lot of people on the planet, it's always going to bring problems. And I don't want to sound like I'm rooting for the elite and the way that the elite are going about certain things, making us sick and not making us sick, but, making people sick, treating people like chattel and treating people like animals, essentially, right? So let's just talk about it, right? Let's just talk about it because the reality is, what it all boils down to is concepts, morals, and values, right? And when you're raised on the type of mindset that in order to live a fulfilled life, in order to live a full life and live a life of means, you have to, and this is a lot of people. This is a mindset that a lot of people are raised on. You get good grades in school and then you go to college and then sometime in college you'll meet the love of your life, or sometime after college you meet the love of your life, and then you guys get married and then you guys have at least 2 kids or more. And then, you work until you're 65 and then you retire and then you die. Like, that is the reality that a lot of people are living. And that's the reality that a lot of people have been living for a long time. So nowadays, it's like a lot of people are having a lot of children. And the problem with that is, at least back in the day, especially with how children are raised today compared to back in the day, it was a lot easier to have a surplus of children because the economy wasn't as bad as it was today. And, a lot of things weren't as bad as it was today. But the difference between, times before and now is that population has tripled, quadrupled, in size. And, when we talk about baby boomers, right? When the baby boomers came to existence, the population has increased to a tremendous amount to where it's like, when you think about these companies, like you think about Kroger and all of the Walmart and all of these main grocery stores, because people need real estate, right? They need a place to live and they need food to eat, right? And then they also need jobs. And so when you have all of these people now in existence, you have to create a dystopia for these people to actually live in, for it to make sense. Because if people aren't constantly doing something, then they'll just be sitting there in boredom. And what do people do when they're bored, right? What do people do when they're bored and and life and to live life and to make life is cheap, right? What do people do? Because I feel like a lot of us, even back then and now, a lot of us don't really understand why and what it means to bring life on this earth. And I feel like we're finally coming to a realization about that when a lot of people are choosing to be childless. A lot of women are refusing to have babies, let alone be in marriages and relationships. And, a lot of people are understanding what it really takes to raise a human being that is going to be productive in a society, right? And so I was actually watching this Netflix show, this show on Netflix called The Society. And it's basically, a bunch of teenagers and, young adults. Basically, I want to say it's about maybe 100 of them, maybe 200 of them. They all get trapped in like this little town. And long story short, like everybody has to play their part. There has to be somebody who does the cooking. There has to be somebody who does the cleaning. There has to be somebody who does the organizing. There has to be somebody who does, entertainment. There has to be somebody in every role. Like everybody has to play their role in order for the whole society to, stick together and to work, right? So when you have a society like today where there's so many people who actually don't really work, who actually don't really do anything, who actually don't really have any talents, or at least don't act upon their true natural talents, like, I don't want to like come for anybody, but a lot of these social media influencers, they don't really have any talents. If all you have to do is go in front of a camera and act, oddly, or act in a way that's not, that doesn't push the next generation forward, like that doesn't contribute anything into society, then you kind of, it's a lot. But let's just rewind here, right? Because I want to talk about how we got here. Right? So like I was mentioning before, people are raised on this morality of like, yeah, you go to school, get good grades, you go to college, you meet the love of your life, you guys have kids, and you grow old, you work till you're 65, and then you retire, and then you die, right? Buy a house, buy a mortgage, and then you die. And when you repeat that cycle for so long, imagine like you have two people, right? And not even two people, let's say like four people, and they both pair up, so that's two pairs of people. And both of those two people decide to have 3 kids. Now you just turned 4 people into 10 people, right? And so when you have more people, you have to pull more resources together to make sure that those people are fed, that those people are clothed, that those people are, that have shelter. You get what I'm saying? But the minute somebody stops doing their job, it makes it harder on everybody else, right? So I understand that, we're living in a society that has like more than quadrupled in size. But the problem is that with this new parenting style, we're not really holding parents and people who are having children accountable for not raising human beings that aren't bringing value into the earth, right? Because if you're living in a true village and you're somebody who's just having babies to have babies, that's just more mouths to feed. And if those babies aren't becoming, productive to that society, then they're just becoming parasitic to the society and to other people who are actually working to keep that society going. So when you think about the rich and you think about, people who essentially was born into money and essentially don't really have anything to contribute to society, but more so they just kind of consume. And then you have this new dystopia of like the internet and the interwebs and, phones and iPads and, the ability to basically, just turn on your camera or turn on your microphone or whatever and just become somebody that is not even really contributing anything to society but entertainment. Then you have a huge problem there, especially when entertainment is like the number one thing that is being pushed, but is not contributing anything good to society. Because look at how it's affecting people's thought process. Look at how it's literally decaying people's mental health, So with that being said, the problem here is that a lot of people are having babies and they're not, really educated on what it means to bring a human being onto the earth. And it's not just, okay, I'm going to have a child, but what kind of values and morals are we all being raised on? What is the point of having a child if you are not trying to raise somebody who's going to be a productive member of society? Right? And I know sometimes we don't really have, as parents, I'm not a parent, but I know sometimes as parents, you don't really have like a huge control over what your child may become, but you are your child's first influence, and you influence them through your own morals and your own values. And if you don't value knowledge, and if you don't value discipline, then it leads to a very destructive society like we are in today. There's a lot of overindulging, there's a lot of overconsuming, there's a lot of lack of critical thinking. There's a lack of, independent thinking. A lot of us like to just regurgitate what we hear and what we see online. And it's very scary, right? Because you have a whole lot of people who don't think for themselves, and they don't even realize that they're not even actually thinking for themselves, right? So when those people become the majority, it's really hard to kind of change that dynamic. Like, you have to start with the children. You have to start with the up and coming children in order to change dynamics. And just the fact that the upcoming generation is called Generation Alpha, right? Like, I don't know if you if you guys watched the SpongeBob SquarePants movie where Plankton basically tries to execute Plan Z. But that's what it's giving. Like, after Generation Z, Gen Z, which is my generation, you have the millennials and then you have Gen Z. It's like, why is it called Generation Alpha? It's kind of like technology is kind of trying to I don't know how to put it. I don't know how to put it into words, but it's like technology is trying to change the human dynamics and trying to slow down the evolution of humans, right? And I don't know. I don't really know how to kind of put this dynamic into words and into context. I'm still trying to analyze it and digest it within my own consciousness of what actually is going on, especially with the children, because the best way to change the future is to start with the children. And with these children being so highly affected by what social media is being, how social media is being portrayed to them, and how they are, forced to grow up at a young age, how they're listening to this vulgar music, how they are just completely non-literate, and how they have short attention spans. It's like slowly dumbing us down through generations. And what kind of parents are they going to become? Do you get what I'm saying? And if we don't put a stop to it now, then it's kind of like, I don't know, with my spiritual belief systems, I prefer not to have kids in this type of generation, because if nothing's going to really be done on a global scale, having to deal with the way these children are being raised, or some sort of population control, then I don't think I'm going to have kids. You know what I'm saying? This is just, it's too much. It is too freaking much. And I used to always say that I'm actually terrified of teenagers, but it's not only just the teenagers. It's the little kids too. It's the 5-year-olds of today and the 6-year-olds and the 7-year-olds of today. Just dealing with them is extremely freaking draining, but they're only acting based off of what they are being fed through social media. And anyways, I wanted to just get into the actual population control portion of this podcast, of this segment, because when we think of population control, a lot of people think they fund wars to basically, have people fight each other. They don't really know exactly why they're fighting, and then people die and this, that, and the third. It's deeper than that. It's deeper than wars. It's deeper than, just eating bad food. It's deeper than fast food. It's deeper than all of that, right? Because when you look at the children of today, right, a lot of them won't really be able to live in the adult world, especially because they're so reliant on technology. And with being heavily reliant on technology, then they're not going to have any choice but to not only rely on technology, but to advance technology to the point where they don't have to utilize their own human abilities. And that's going to be a problem, because in the event something happens with technology, then what happens to them? You get what I'm saying? Like, if you need technology to monitor, everything that's going on around you, if you need technology just to get from point A to B, when technology is no longer there, you're pretty much stuck, And so like the heavy reliance on technology is becoming something that is a growing concern for a lot of people. Because it is a blessing, but where I don't feel like we are exactly understanding how to use it in the best way possible. You get what I'm saying? And so, there's a lot of things that are contributing to population control. And I feel like population control is necessary, especially in a time where parents don't want to parent their children. I feel like, birth control should be, pushed onto people. I feel like vasectomies should be pushed onto young men. And I feel like, sexual education should be taught to young adults. Like, this is a serious thing because you're talking about children, bringing children into the world. It's a scary thing to think about. It's like, what are we doing? Like, we're not even parenting our children. We're just putting iPads and phones in front of their faces just so that we can get a little bit of time off. And it all kind of like melts in together, right? Because now that there's more people on the planet, right? Now, people who are a bit more clever in their ways can just, invest in real estate and then rent it out to people. And then they don't really have to waste their energy and their lifetime, essentially slaving for a corporation that doesn't care about them, right? But then the people that are, they're just so unaware of what's going on to the point where they're basically treated like chattel. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever went into an In-N-Out at like on a Friday night and you see the drive-through line and it's like going literally around the block. And it's like, for somebody to really sit there in a drive-through line that looks like that for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, it completely blows my mind. It completely blows my mind. Like, at that point, like, it's going to sound harsh, but at that point, if you're doing that, then you have nobody to blame but yourself. If you're eating McDonald's every day, if you're eating fast food every single day because you simply are too lazy to cook for yourself and you don't really see or understand the depths of the benefits that come with being a healthy human being, then you're kind of just doing it to yourself at the end of the day. If you're not valuing your health, then you're doing it to yourself. If you're not valuing the health of the minds of your children, then you are doing it to yourself. Because imagine like you grow old and the children that you refuse to raise aren't even smart enough or illiterate enough to get a decent job, right? Imagine like Gen Alpha having to, now obviously there's going to be a couple of them, sprinkled in there that were raised correctly, but imagine Gen Alpha as a whole now being put into the shoes of millennials today, right? At that age, and they have to be the new doctors, the new lawyers. Like, this is a new generation, y'all. Like, and I know it's hard to care when you're not going to be like a part. You're not really necessarily going to be alive. Well, no, you're going to be alive, like, especially if you're Gen Z. And that's probably why, like, I only hear really millennials and Gen Z speaking out about it. But isn't it millennials that are the parents? It's like, what's going on? Like, what is going on, y'all? Like, talk to me about it. Let me know in the comments what you think. But yeah, this population control, it's going to sound harsh, but at the end of the day, like, if you are not putting your health as a priority, then you're kind of just feeding yourself into the supermassive black hole of population control, right? If you aren't well aware of what's going on around you and you don't like actively move in a way that benefits not only you but the people that come after you, then you're kind of just feeding into the machine of like population control. And it's very much necessary because as a population, if we're growing at a high speed and we're not creating and producing people, human beings that are actually being productive and helpful to the planet, then we're essentially just being parasitic to the whole entire planet. And eventually, if we keep going on like this, then there's not going to be any planet left. Like, really think about it. Like, really think about it. Really think about Gen Alpha having, like, you know, that type of mentality, like multiplying by hundreds of thousands. Like, I mean, like, by hundreds of thousands. And I feel like this is why I understand why I think it's in South Korea, where, you know, a lot of American like social media is actually blocked over there. Like, a lot of social media in America is blocked over there. Like, the only real place that, you know, this social media type of construct is well known is in America and Europe and, you know, other places that are more evolved within their technology. And yeah, like, I understand why, like, certain people just, like, don't really mess with, like, America, because, like, we think that we are, you know, one of the best, but we're actually, like, very sick. And well, I don't want to say we, because I don't want to include myself, but I am here. So, like, it's just, it's like, it's very unfortunate, y'all. It's very unfortunate. And it's like, if we don't, I mean, I feel like there are some changes happening, and I feel like a lot of Gen Z and some millennials are choosing not to have children because we don't want to add to the problem. And even if, like, we are trying to raise children who are better than, you know, what is being taught and influenced through social media, you know, peer influence is always going to outshine parental influence. The influence of the culture and what's going on in your generation is going to be more of an influence than what your parents, you know, or how your parents are trying to raise you at the end of the day. So it's just scary. Like, a lot of population control. I mean, population control is more than just words. It's like, you know, the types of food that people are eating. Like, so many people are sick, you know, with diabetes and all of these sicknesses caused by the foods that we're eating, which has a lot of toxic ingredients and toxic chemicals. And the reason why they put, you know, all these toxic ingredients into our food is because they feel like for one, they're trying to get rid of a lot of those ingredients, because for it to just sit on the earth for too long, it's not going to be good for the earth if we don't find a way to recycle those ingredients, right? So they are literally choosing to put it in our food so that at least it will be, like, contained within our human vessels for a little bit before, like, it really messes with the planet. But the planet's already being messed with because there's just too many freaking people on this earth. And not only that, but it's like, the more people that we have on this earth, the more cars that are being driven on the road, the more gas that we're going to need, the more gas we're going to need, the more we're going to need to mine the gas and find the gas from other countries. And the more we have to do that, like, it's like we've created such a society where anybody can just have kids, instead of, like, thinking of, like, oh my gosh, like, not even holding people responsible for raising their own children. Because when you hold people responsible for raising their own children, then they rethink the whole idea of, like, having kids and engaging in activities that will produce children, right? So I always say, like, the environment, whether it's the environment now, the environment has changed, right? The environment has changed from what it was back then. Now, back then, you know, when we were more so like a village tribal type of people, and, you know, we had our villages, we had our tribes, and people actually went hunting. Like, say, for example, like, you will send a group of people out to hunt bears or out to hunt deer or whatever for their skin, because it's the fall time and we're going to head into winter and it's going to get cold. So we're trying to hunt these animals to use their fur so that we can stay warm, essentially, right? So in that dynamic, there are going to be, like, maybe 10 people sent out to hunt and maybe only 6 come back. But that is just natural selection, and that is just the circle of life. But now it just seems like a lot of people are more sick and more dying, but it's just because that there's a bigger number, like there's a larger number of people. So you're still going to have people who are predators. You're still going to have environmental factors that are going to contribute to making people sick and deleting them, because at the end of the day, Like, that's just what it is. That's just what it is. That's just how it works. Whether you're deleted by drugs, deleted by some sort of addiction, deleted by, the decline of your own mental illness, your own mental health, whatever the case may be. You're going to have predators and prey regardless. There's no way you can have prey without the predators. There's no way that we can all live in a happy world. But, to live in a world where there's just so many freaking people, it's just like, and not only that, but so many people who are just ignorant and who don't care to like actually understand the truth and understand knowledge to help themselves. That's really scary, because it makes you feel like a black sheep, which I've always felt my entire life. And it just makes you feel like, I don't know, it just makes you feel like so disconnected, right? Because think about it, like, people can't understand the simple concept of like there being more people and more people eating animals. Like, there has to be like an equal amount of people eating animals and people who eat vegetables, right? There has to be an equal amount. Otherwise, if everybody ate animals, then would there really be enough animals for it to go around the way that Americans eat meat? Like, literally for every single meal, you have breakfast, you have your sausages, you have your bacon, you have your whatever you eat for breakfast, as an American breakfast. And then during lunch, you have your hamburgers, you have your chicken sandwich, you have your chicken salad, you have, whatever it is that you eat for lunch. And then your dinner, you have like your steak and asparagus, or you have your, baked chicken, or you have your lasagna with beef, or you have your chili with beef. It's like, it's too much. It's too much. Because the more people there are, the more animals we're going to need. It's too much. It's becoming too much. And it's like, eventually there has to be some sort of factor that controls the population, regardless if it, because if it wasn't for like the society that we've built and, that contains cities and whatever, and we're in the wild, then there would still be factors that would contribute to population growth. In a village, people aren't just having babies left and right. It's like, people understood, like, okay, like if there was something special about a certain person, then they would obviously, reproduce. If there was something special about that person, whether they had like, smarts, or they had good leadership skills, or they had good hunting abilities, like they would know, like, okay, there's obviously something special about this person. They should just go ahead and reproduce. But in this society that we live in nowadays, it's just anybody can reproduce. And and with no responsibility and not being held accountable to even raise what you are producing as a productive member of society. So that's the problem. But that's just my take on it. That's just what I feel. That's just how I think about it. It's definitely different, but I want to know what you guys think. Thank you for sticking around on my first podcast. This one was a little bit choppy, I know, but I definitely wanted to try something different, and I definitely wanted to come on here and just kind of test the waters with this whole podcast thing, because it's a lot easier for me to, be more consistent with this type of stuff. And these are just like little things that I think about, and I do want to like hold discussions on the type of topics that I personally think about on a day-to-day basis, because if I can't find it on the interwebs, if I can't find, the topics being discussed on the interwebs, that type of topics that I want to talk about, then I just feel like it's, up to me to actually bring those topics to the forefront. But yeah, I wouldn't, don't give yourself into the population control if you're scared about it. The best thing you can do is to protect your own health, and that's pretty much it. Health is wealth, and don't, be, like I said, like, be different, don't just follow the crowd, and yeah, use your own brain. Use your own brain. Start thinking for yourself. Get off social media and just meditate on different things. And, don't allow people to put into your head different concepts and belief systems, and without like researching it or without thinking for yourself, because everybody tends to have their own little, narrative and their own little, thing going on. So just try to really read through the lines. So yeah, I'm going to end it here, and I will see you guys in my next podcast. All right. Bye.